college to learn that, yes, plants produce, use carbon dioxide. But then at night, they use oxygen like we do.
Same exactly. Well, they just always right because they make all that sugar because it's transportable.
You've got some
But if
stuff.
you need
It is surprising.
you have to use
Also, career day prep. Because I really want to find especially for
I got the
especially.
my floor mates did movie nights, so we just go to
stop working
at night, messing with stuff until we could watch a movie. So
Whatever.
I forget that really quick, but yeah, it was fun.
Okay.
for companies that are coming to career day. There's companies that aren't coming.
So Devin, how many years do you have here?
I'm only actually gonna be here for 3 years. This is my last semester, so.
Yeah,
More classes?
or they know
I took
in the file. But a lot of companies, I'm looking at, I talked to
Save some money.
they have said that they actually don't post it.
Still end up in this.
Instead, just take resumes at career day.
It's nice because I like the teachers.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of annoying.
We have smaller classes and they were teachers here.
It has the benefit of it.
May not be
They actually need
best.
direct.
And there's not even that many, which is like,
Just
especially, I think
Yeah.
it was for circuits
So
specifically.
yeah.
The teacher that was teaching it was a doubly electrical engineer
So
that
yeah,
didn't
I
like Mechie's, because they were just lazy in his class.
What are mechs?
I'm actually getting much stronger. Like I'm getting my strength back.
He didn't really like him and then doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's because
So
I'm not as stressed.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Because
So
honestly,
you took it at a community.
I haven't taken it as well.
Yeah, hey, I went to a big university, and
This week we're
doing
maybe prestigious, let's say.
My sleep's
But
been
you're in a
bad.
lecture hall with 300 other students taking organic
But
chem
Yeah.
25.
I really feel like it's the
20 or less
lack of
once you get to
stress.
the like how three my class we had some people that showed up
Probably like
it was like
3 sets. I did 3 sets of.
I like how the mathematician for like 40 years
Yeah.
retired got
So I think that's would translate to a max
I just
about
enjoy teaching that stuff.
205 or 310.
I did a lot of these classes.
So Julia's my daughter.
I like them.
So yeah, we've met.
actually they're
Actually, yes.
Focus.
That's some really good gains.
So,
So
Goldman,
I
and I'm
really like this one.
at my church, and Jeff and Julia go there too. So the 4 people
Yeah.
that
Or
are
they're
there
the independent study.
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah,
And then there's a
TA's
whole
grading
bunch of
because the
people
professor of
who are
600
like
you can't.
Yeah.
But
3 to 5 years older.
Okay.
yeah, I
But
You've been
and
consistent
this
with the
is
gym.
how it's been since
when I
they
was
were
thinking I wanted
infants.
to teach
We had a whole bunch of
philosophy,
people.
I just stood back as a
And then there was
philosopher and
Julia
thought about the
there,
terrain.
and then there were-
And I just said, I have a much better shot at getting something
Yes.
full time
Like
with
their
that
whole
Like my first time in
college level than I ever
And by a
will.
while, I mean at least
A university, Notre Dame, or any university.
Bench press is actually the best
You
exercise.
need a PhD, and even if you have the best pedigree, your chances are slim. It's based on breeding. And I just said, it's not gonna happen. I said, this is where, and it actually panned out where I'm full time. And there are people
So
who read at Notre Dame, and they're just teaching part-time.
So there's like
So I
a
thought I made the right decision, is that if I have a shot, I
Way like
just think it's gonna be
230
here.
Carl, I don't remember
dips.
where you
And
were.
I so like
So I go to
but I'm actually getting fairly close to being able to do them just body weight.
Once
But like it's like these dip bars are kind of like go like
His
this.
one lecture was
With the toe on the ground?
It's right next to me.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah, I do the, I ask like.
Like
Yeah.
the assist thing or
You have 2
Well, and even at that level, I went to
Yeah.
pretty big student's
Yeah.
office
So-
hour,
I'm
my
not sure if we're
chemistry
talking about the same.
instructor.
I don't know, 600.
I didn't know how to do some of these problems. He sat down with me and did it a little bit, and then he just said, okay, you're gonna have to do this the rest of the time.
So, yeah, so
Shoot
we.
me out, and it was a little like shocking, he was not
We had our
interested
senior pastor for a long time.
in and helping me through this. He was busy or he was used to office hours where nobody came by. And, you know,
Okay,
I
yeah.
remember stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it's either
If
pure
I
or
You're not really alone.
Be around the time, I don't even have long
Yeah,
because a
especially
lot of
in
students now don't come to your office hours like they used to, like but Zoom, I think
It's a really good exercise. I should
You can just do it
again. I'm
any time of day.
I think I did.
Whenever you're available.
I did like
How
5.
much time do you
Yeah. I think it's great you went to community, it hasn't hurt you, you saved money.
The hardest part is like once you become an intern, some colleges are harder to So
Yeah.
Like I think so, class, it's supposed to start at 11, but
you know,
they're
this is
going down to
there
11.
are conditions you can really transfer to the start program there unless somebody else agrees that's the standard.
So I think I should be.
So if you're like unsure you're going into
Back, like you can do your own body weight comfortably.
So there's not.
I think I probably could do my own body weight with one of my
It sometimes depends on the school.
Well, you're glad you came
to
here.
get the weight going and start adding
Yeah,
weight.
because
Um,
it's a much smaller school.
Yo, Carl.
Okay.
Carl. Can I start now?
We ready?
Yes.
Ready? Go for it. Go for it.
In my cycle.
yeah, okay.
Evan.
I've recorded.
Yes.
Alrighty, guys. Welcome, welcome.
The function.
Thank you all for being here. I hope you're excited as much as I am about this talk, because I have not heard about the paradox of the rock before tonight, so this will be a very interesting talk. So I am going to begin with just some, not really official business, but really just as you know, kind of a bringing this up, because we do have speakers actually lined up for most of the semester. However, you know, there may be circumstances where we might not have a speaker, you know, it depends on the semester what we do and how we plan things out. But if anyone would like to give a talk, if you would actually be so willing to, you know, do some research, stuff like that, I'm putting together a slideshow template. I'll probably do a Google Slides version, and then I'll do a PowerPoint version for anyone who actually knows how to use PowerPoint. But really just as a way to provide, you know, just a structure and you know, because I know PowerPoint and making slides can be kind of daunting, and just presenting in general. So we want to offer that as a resource to just everyone who's willing to present. You know, of course, be as fun with it as you want to, because it's your presentation, and still, you know, of course, stick to the topic. But you know, we want this to be something that's collaborative with members. That's something that we did actually with our former president, Luke Hansen, if any of you can remember him, who has since gone on to seminary school. So praise God. But we also have the GroupMe. Most of you are probably on it, but this is just a QR for anyone who's not on it. There is a purchase scam thing going around with other GroupMes. It's not as prevalent with ours, I don't think, but
Ours is you have to be invited, so it's less likely in ours.
yeah, so just be aware of that too with other GroupMes in case you don't know, and if you're wondering about that, track me down at the end of the talk and I'll talk to you about that. We also do have a YouTube channel, which most of you probably know by now, but yeah, just for those who don't know. Also, our Anchor Night, which is monthly, shout out to that, is this Friday at 7 p.m. in the Green Center Petroleum. So I definitely encourage everyone who can, not everyone can make that unfortunately, but it'll be a great night. We are providing the speaker. Who's the speaker for that? Oh, you. Oh, you're speaking. Awesome. Well, I'll be looking forward to that.
It's on Church Unity, Grayson. Where's Grayson? Ask.
Yeah.
So in other words, how do you get along with somebody who's of a different theological position, just a different if you're Baptist and one's Presbyterian, you know, like,
Yeah.
I will go outside of that and talk about how you would talk to people in cults.
Cool.
Dual religion or something like that.
So yeah, it's definitely a good conversation to have. So yeah, I'd like to welcome David Spiegel. I will pray us in real quick. I will leave this up as well because he won't be using slides, he'll be using the whiteboard. So yeah, if you'll bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for David and for his time, because we do cherish that. And thank you too for just keeping us strong for this semester. I do pray for every student in this room that with their studies and just being here, you know, I definitely want you to raise them up, Lord, and definitely dwell with them. And I invite you to this meeting. I just invite you to all of us, or to be a part of all of us, you know, this semester, and just, yeah, lift us up, Lord, help us be lights, and help us defend our faith with gentleness and respect, because that's what you want for us. You want us to know you, but also know each other, because you are a good God and you provide, and we know that. So I thank you for all of the wonderful things that you're doing in our lives, and I just hope that you'll bless this talk and bless our speaker, and yeah, just bless this night. In your name I pray.
Amen.
Where, do you mind if I ask where you got that? Because they took those faculty profiles off, did you get it off the community college website?
How'd you get that? Because you sent that to me.
Oh, I thought maybe they just moved it, okay. You don't have to notice that I have grayer hair. But I don't mind, finally I'm getting respect from people.
There you go.
Okay, so. All right, first, we're gonna deal with the paradox of the stone, so I'm gonna do this. In the beginning, I'm gonna see if someone knows what the paradox is. And then I'm gonna get you into 3 tables, divide up that there's an equal number, and have your table come up with a solution. How would you respond to that? Okay? Then we'll come back, see what your solutions are, we'll sort of table them, and then you get to compare it to Mavrody's response to the paradox of the stone. Because sometimes when you are presented with challenges by skeptics, philosophy is very, very important. It's serious work. You have to be able to offer a response that's within your epistemic rights, meaning, sure, they're gonna still disagree, but what you gave was rational and plausible, and it's enough to stave off a threat and have people continue on in their faith, okay? So where you're gonna see how Mavrody's handles this, and he's a top-notch philosopher. It's just gonna be a good piece of philosophical work that you can appreciate and learn from. But for right now, before we go through his 11 paragraphs, divide your tables up into 3 like that, and come up with a solution. But before you do that, can anybody tell me what the paradox of the stone is? What's the puzzle?
The omnipotence paradox is, can God create a rock so heavy or so large that he himself cannot lift?
Okay, and what's the dilemma? Skeptics are raising that.
That is omnipotence. Whether or not he has full
Well, let's
power.
play it out. There's a dilemma involved. If you say no, he can't make a too heavy stone,
He's not omnipotent.
that seems to suggest there's something he can't do, right? If you say yes, he can make a too heavy stone, what does that imply or suggest according to the skeptic?
He can't lift the rock.
There's something else he can't do, so either way, yes or no, they believe leads to the same conclusion, and there is damage done to the doctrine of omnipotence, okay? So we need to respond to that. So in these groups, use your brain powers and see how would you respond to this. Well, I'll call on your group, have someone represent your group, what did you come up with? And then we'll see how Mavrody's deals with it, and there've been lots of other people, but his, we'll talk a little bit, so I'll tell you a little bit more about Mavrody's and why skeptics get involved in conceptual analysis of the attributes, but before we do that, take a stab at this, and then you can see how you measure up with Mavrodi's response. How's that sound? Okay, get in your groups and have a spokesperson, but come up and move around till there's an equal number of people at the tables. How many do we have?
About 4 or 5 people in a group, something like that, I think.
So a skeptic has asked that? Well, we need someone over here. We need a. Hey, how about someone from this table go over there? Carl, okay,
No,
Carl,
I'll go
over
here,
there.
I'll go here.
We just need one person over here, and then we'll have tables of 4, okay?
There you go.
We need a volunteer to come over here
From
from this table.
All right, you're gracious.
Okay, so you know what the paradox is. How do you respond to that?
All right, all
Someone's attacking your faith. Okay?
It's not often difficult.
Children's book, I had this in there. Red ducks. Family of red ducks.
I have an answer to this, I told him to say.
Is that it? Just the family of
Lay
red
it out.
ducks?
Family of
Why
red
do
ducks
your
and they talk
understanding
about
of
God.
Oh,
That was
How did they
it was
resolve
an
that?
entire series,
How
sorry?
did they resolve the problem?
The red ducks seem to think our God could not create the stone that he could not live.
Because in the Bible, he has shown his power and he continues to
So-
show his
Power is
power.
powerful.
My
All powerful.
part of the statement I'm gonna attack is the word heavy.
Made the universe, ought to be able
No, well, it
to
required
do
mass.
anything to it or with it.
And it's
Not-
like,
not
okay,
simply permission, but it
if
ought
it's
to be
made out of
universe.
mass, then it can be lifted by God.
statement.
You made the
But
matter
in order to have infinite
Yeah, so how could he not
mass.
be able to do whatever?
Basically,
We have our creations get beyond our control sometimes, but
but then, in order, so
Yeah.
basically in order
we
for
didn't
God
create
to
it out of
operate,
nothing.
so all powerful, he'd have to
Well, so
like
what are some
inspire
verses
it
that
with
support
infinite weight.
So I heard the
the
quote.
idea that
Maybe the spirit of question is more
So the quote that I
can God create something
how
that
we
we
can
cannot?
use this would be
yeah, something about
response
spreading the heavens out.
God can limit himself.
Because it goes
Yeah.
with, that question is illogical, because the first statement, could God create something that he cannot lift? And this
We're still so the assumption.
The Genesis account is a good, like,
is illogical.
maybe not explicitly saying that he's all powerful, but a good display of his power in the fact that he created everything that we know.
Might as well, like,
Right, he brings everything.
we're not
to
gonna
the
follow.
It's not John 1.
I mean, if you're on the
And
The process would be going.
And then there's some responses which are like, either that omnipotence, logic is like,
When you say
God
God
created
created
God's making.
It's like nothing exists that he didn't.
So I think it's a problem with
create.
All things are made through him and without him, not anything is made
omnipotent, which I believe is.
that was made.
God has to fall within us.
That's just, nothing is made apart from him.
So I wouldn't say that it's a limitation of his power for not being created. Rather, I feel like that can exist.
With your question, Brian, it's like, I kind of maybe try to extrapolate
Yeah.
Alright,
so then,
So also just like, you could pick
Crypto basis,
just say yes or no.
Craft a solution.
But the way it's
How do
said,
we address this?
Here.
two thoughts I had. The first one is like, there are some ways to like, well, no.
You're looking at me, you wanna know my answer to this?
What's your answer?
That,
God can do all things within his nature.
God can't do anything that is
God can
contradictory by definition. So he also can't lie, because if you're if your very nature, if you are truth itself,
So it's like,
it makes no sense to say that you can lie.
well, maybe if you change
Didn't do it this last Sunday, so I
In my mind, it's the idea, it's like you cannot make a rock that cannot be moved and expect it to be moved. Like A cannot equal B, A has. If you create a movable rock, it has to be movable. You can't create a movable rock or an immovable rock and then expect it to be
By
movable.
means of
It's not,
the consistency
consistent. It doesn't make any sense. You can't make something truthful and also lie. It's either a lie or a truth. It can't be both.
So that's usually where
Boiling is
there's a
hyperbolic.
logical.
Even just like a really
It's
hot
not
bath.
reasonable to expect God to do something
Heating blanket.
that is logically
Yeah.
inconsistent.
The problem with the heating blanket, I just sweat, the problem with the hot bath.
Again, we're not gonna expect God to be on the ledge and off the ledge at the same time.
All right, you guys,
Just by definition.
a couple more minutes, have some kind of consensus as best you can.
I do wonder if me goes back to like many years ago, right? His response was values which was like
time with stupid questions.
well,
and
also
make this wrong. That's just
It's
super
one I always, my quick response to somebody
like
like
velocity, the
entire,
you know, like Shredder's cat, like is both alive and dead. So if you have a death
That's a good question.
it's both able to lift
Just
and
ask.
every time. It sounds really silly, but that's a common sentence in freedom of you for right? Like, you can have so
but that avoids the end.
people who may be a part of it at the same time. You can have Shredder's cat with cat dead alive. You know, if you think about it, like that's
It's paradoxical the way that there's actually.
it's not like we see it as
Well, we were going to hey, everybody.
Yeah. Truth.
Take your time, let's, okay, we're gonna start with
yeah.
So I kind of
this group.
I use that.
This is not the case. We're not
as an
gonna
example.
Anyway.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna have our first group. Share with the group, what do you think is a possible solution?
So we've had a couple ideas. One of them is that it's just a logical contradiction. But I feel like that defeats the whole purpose. So the other answer is no.
Well, why would that defeat the whole purpose? You said there's a logical contradiction
Yeah,
involved.
like-
What would be the significance of that if that was true?
Yeah, it basically it's like a invalid question sort of deal. But I mean, I said no just because it's an object that's made out of matter. So assuming that it's solely just really heavy because it's made out of a lot of matter, God could lift it.
Okay,
So in order to be too heavy for God to lift, God would have to like impart some sort of like supernatural heaviness to it.
okay, so no, he can't make that rock.
But if it was literally just a rock that was just super big,
But then the skeptic will say there's something he can't do. But,
he also
okay,
can't lie.
there's some promise there. Okay, let's go to the next group.
Something we discussed was in how the problem is proposed to begin with, and how exactly we're defining the term omnipotence, and what that actually means in what God can do. Because, like Hawkins said, I'd say that God can't lie, but that doesn't detract from his omnipotence, but is instead a complement to his character and the fact that he is truth.
Okay, there's some good analytical work there. You're starting to wonder, what do we mean by omnipotence? Maybe it needs to be nuanced, okay? So that's good, and you're gonna be pleased, Matt Brody's gonna talk about that, and what you said about the logical something's, okay, that's a good start. What about over here?
We kind of talked in a similar way with logically inconsistent. It's like A cannot equal B, like God can't like be on a fence but also not be on a fence. Like
Okay.
it's just this idea of like you can't create a movable object but then expect it to be moved. Like it doesn't make it's like saying making a tall fence but expecting it to be short.
Okay, what about objects like that? What are you really saying about a tall, short fence? What are you saying?
It's just a logical contradiction.
And so does that have ramifications for its existence maybe?
It can't exist.
Okay, it can't exist. This is good, okay? And what about over here?
Go for it. What you were talking about.
Okay, well, so we also talked about logical contradiction, like basically the same thing they're saying. And then we also brought up the idea of, right, okay, if you think about mathematics and you have two infinite objects, right? Which infinite object is bigger? The infinite one that's really big or the infinite one that's really big, right? And so it just kind of brought up the idea of the way, scientific communities think of like light as both a particle and a wave, and Schrodinger's cat, the cat's both alive and dead at the same time. Like you could have a rock that's both liftable and non-liftable because of the mere idea that it's infinite and created by an infinite God. So something along the lines of like, infinity is like hard. We can't put infinite omnipotence in a box the way our human minds like to. So if you have an infinite God creating an infinite object, it has all characteristics and no characteristics. That kind of
Okay.
idea.
You're hovering over some conceptual analysis of terms and concepts. Is that maybe we need to be precise? All right, so actually this is very impressive, okay? You're gonna see some of this and Mavrodes is really gonna bring it out, okay? So let's talk about George Mavrodes. Here's his background a little bit, okay? Donald brought a book. I have a book of his. I've dabbled with him. I've been a Christian for a long time, and so years ago when I was in college, I'd come across Mavrodes, and when I read his stuff, I just thought his work was solid, okay? And he taught at the University of Michigan until 1963. He died in 2019. He was born in 1930. And he got his PhD at the University of Chicago, and he was an apologist at heart. He was really interested in showing certain doctrines of the Christian faith are not logically incoherent, like the incarnation. He's well known for his work on that it is philosophically sound, and it is, you can talk about the incarnation in coherent means, okay? It's not logically incoherent. The rationality of belief, and this article, the article that this is from, is some puzzles concerning omnipotence, okay? And it's in the mainstream of his interests. It's an excellent response, and he's an analytical philosopher, so he will pay attention to terms and say if a skeptic's not defining terms the way they need to be, or it's a little muddy, he will clear the muddy waters, okay? So that's a little background on him. And like I said, I always enjoyed when I read his stuff. And so how I found this is, I don't know, I was searching online PR readings for my philosophy of religion class, and I came across a top 10 list. Top 10 list of writings in philosophy of religion. And he was in that top 10 list. This was a list where there were other philosophers that said, if I was going to give you a top 10 list of good work, philosophical work in philosophy of religion, this article was on there. So I was immediately curious, and I got it, read it. It was 11 paragraphs. I go, wow, this is impressive, effective, and logically efficient. So that's how I discovered it. And I hope and I think you will appreciate it. Okay? So with that little background, let's now talk about this whole project. Why do skeptics bring up a puzzle like this? What are they trying to show about the attribute of omnipotence? And why are they interested? Skeptics, they're very interested in discussing the coherence or not of the attributes of the God of monotheism. Why? I read a debate in a book between Kai Nielsen and J.P. Moreland, Does God Exist? And Kai Nielsen spent a lot of time discussing the attributes of the theists. And that's when I realized, okay, why is there a focus? So let me throw it out. Why do skeptics want to focus on the attributes? They must think it's profitable for them.
Well, if you can demonstrate an impossibility of having these so-called attributes, then you potentially are getting rid of God altogether.
Yes,
Well, in their minds, God doesn't exist, so they think it's just a hallucination in the person's mind. So they think that if they could attack the person and basically show that they're crazy, they could show that God doesn't exist.
okay. So you focus on these attributes because if you could show they don't make sense, they're logically incoherent, right? That could be another avenue of attacking the faith. Like what if I said this? Hi Dave, hi, what do you believe in? I believe in the square circle God. What would you guys say to that? I believe in the square circle God.
What's your evidence for that?
What is that?
Yeah.
Okay, does a square circle exist?
No.
So I couldn't possibly believe in a square circle God? No, I mean, I believe in a square circle God, but you know that God, your belief is false because square circles is logically incoherent. Do you see what they're doing? So if you say, here's a God, here's his attributes, they are trying as best they can to show if these attributes are logically incoherent, it's a way of falsifying belief in the monotheistic God. So it's another avenue, and they believe logical incoherence, if you could show that, is even stronger than attacking evidence. You can bypass evidence and say this is logically incoherent right from the beginning and shut down monotheistic belief, okay? So that's why there's this focus. Now, this has been good for theists because in the past, unless you're asked these questions, you may have muddled thinking or the waters are muddy because there hasn't been precision and preciseness. So when someone with the rock so heavy that you can't lift, the paradox of the stone, what they're trying to attack is that omnipotence, that doctrine doesn't make sense. Do you see that? That's the whole purpose of that. They'll go, oh, is he omnipotent? Well, that means he can do anything. So can he make a rock too heavy to lift? If you say no, they're going to go, well, that's something he can't do. And if he's supposed to be able to do anything, and you say, yes, he can make a too heavy stone, there's something else he can't do. So they think they can show that omnipotence doesn't make sense and you falsify monotheism. Or if you believe in God, he can't be omnipotent. That's what they're trying to do, is show with this puzzle something God can't do to tear down and make the doctrine of omnipotence self-contradictory, logically incoherent, okay? That's what they're trying to do here. So, we need good philosophical work pushing back. Philosophy is serious. We need to at least have a response that places us within our epistemic rights, meaning we have a right to see this not as a threat because our response has been capable and effective enough, even if you still don't agree, which probably wouldn't happen, we don't see this as a threat and the answer's been satisfying, right? So that's the importance of all this. And Mavrodes, he will define terms carefully, show where skeptics are bringing in concepts that are a misunderstanding or they're not precise and refined enough, and that's exactly what he's going to do here in 11 paragraphs, okay? So I've got some handouts for you. I'm not a PowerPoint person. Is that okay? Are you guys going to judge me? Everybody here is PowerPoint except me, okay? So here's your handouts, and then there is a second handout here, which we'll get to through this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through this 11 paragraph response. It's just 11 paragraphs, okay? And after we're done, I'm going to give you all a present. I'm going to give you the actual article. We don't do it now because it's too technical. It would just bog us all down. Right now we need a paraphrase. So I don't want anybody in here to say I've never given you anything, okay? So you will get this article. So after this, you can go home and when you have time, you can read this, okay? His actual words on that. But, this would be on page 2, or it may be a little different on yours. Go to C, go to point C. So we're gonna go through his 11 paragraph, we're gonna progress through it, everybody. And it may be a little technical, there's maybe one chapter that's a little technical. I think you'll be able to keep up and follow this, okay? And I've got, that second handout is for that one paragraph, paragraph 8, okay? So, just bear with me, we'll go through this, okay? And then we'll talk about some of the benefits of doing this kind of brain work, okay? And there are lots of benefits. Okay, now we do have four actors in this article that you need to know about. You guys saw the puppets, okay? All right, the article's gonna mention skeptics referred to generally throughout history, okay? Who have, for example, tried to tear down omnipotence by trying to come up with something God can't do, right? So he refers to just the historical tradition of skeptics trying to attack the attributes. Then he is going to bring up Thomas Aquinas. So that's Thomas Aquinas. And by the way, do you see this outfit? I wouldn't be caught dead in something like that. I never wear that with a little ruffled collar, okay?
Oh,
all right, that was just for a different time. All right. Then, so we got general skeptics. We have Thomas Aquinas. Then we have the die-hard objector skeptic. This is someone Mavrodes in his own time maybe is hearing his response and responding. So this would be an individual skeptic who's going to object to something. And this is general skeptical tradition, okay? And then the last character is a theologian who's sincere, loves God, and his response to when he hears the paradox, okay? So these are the characters. Now, let's just start, okay? So in paragraph 1, Mavrodes just introduces the paradox, and he says, and he's talking about omnipotence, and he says to skeptics, the doctrine of omnipotence appears. To them, they just think this is what it means, okay? That's why I underlined appears. It appears to skeptics to claim that God can do anything, so they attempt to show some stuff God can't do. If he can't do it, he's not omnipotent. If they were successful, that is not good news. Let's say philosophers, analytical philosophers said, it's pretty much a consensus. This is an incoherent concept. That would be unnerving, right? Okay. Then in paragraph 2, this is where he introduces Thomas Aquinas, okay? Who responded to this attack on omnipotence because the skeptics brought up, what about a square circle? So can God make a square circle? So let me ask you this. Let's see, what's your name again?
Claire.
Claire, could you go out in the parking lot and look around all 3 levels and see if you could find a square circle, and could you bring it back? And if you bring one back, I'll give you $500. And I actually mean that, I will. Okay? If I asked you that, what's your response?
It doesn't exist.
So would you even bother going to look at the parking lot?
Nope.
How come? What do you think about square circles? What did you just say?
Doesn't exist.
They don't exist. What about if you looked at the hills in Golden? There's a lot of terrain there. I mean, do you think you need to look everywhere in the universe first? Or do you know prior?
It's a contradiction.
Right, square circles don't exist. So your answer is correct. They are going to bring that up. And here's what Thomas Aquinas, his solution was, we need to talk about what we mean by anything, right? Can God do anything? And you guys were hovering around this, so that was impressive. What he means by anything is, when we say God can do anything, we're talking about objects, states of affairs, and there's two fill in the blanks there, that are possible, whose descriptions are not self-contradictory. So you could write those in there, okay? So when God can do anything, anything that's possible, actual objects or states of affairs. And here's a phrase: if I can't draw a regular circle, then that does show limitation, right? Because a regular circle is a possible object, correct? But the fact that I can't draw a square circle does not show limitation, and Aquinas says it's the same for God. So his solution was, what do we mean by anything? It means possible objects, not pseudo-objects, self-contradictory, or pseudo-tasks. Those are non-entities, they're impossibilities, and they have no bearing on limitation on God, okay? And, this is where that's analytical work, right? Is what do we mean by that? So that's Aquinas. And then what Mavrodes does in paragraph 3, he transitions now to a more involved problem. Another example, now it's not a square circle, now it's this: can God make a too heavy stone? Okay, that he can't lift. Can God create a stone too heavy for him to lift? And here's what Mavrodes says. Now, at first, this seems to be a little bit more involved, doesn't it? Because it involves a dilemma, and we've already talked about it, right? If we say yes, he can create such a stone, then what does that mean? It means he can or can't lift it? Can't. Oh, there's that word can't next to the omnipotence of God. There's something he can't do. If you say no, then this is something he can't do. So Mavrodes says, because it involves a dilemma, and a yes or no leads to the same conclusion, it actually seems, this is a little bit more complicated, okay? It's more involved than the square circle because it involves a dilemma, and so he elaborates a little bit at this. Here's why. And he says this example, because it's more involved, so we're in paragraph 4 now, because it's more involved, at first you're going to say this: I don't think Thomas Aquinas' solution may not work here, because you think it's a little bit more involved, right? When you say X is able to draw a square circle, what do you immediately, your logical organs, what do they do when you hear that? X is able to draw a square circle. Okay, you just go, zzz, your logic meters, zzz, that's ridiculous, right? The contradiction, the pseudo, the impossibility, you see how it's bam, it's right there. No, okay? He says, but when you have this other phrase, X is able to make a thing too heavy for X to lift, do you see how that immediate logical annoyance or irritant doesn't come? And why do you think that is? There is a scenario where an entity could make something and can't lift it. What kind of creatures will we be talking then? Us, finite. So he says the reason we're not seeing that there's something pseudo going on here is because we all can envision human beings, we can build ships and not lift them. And there's no contradiction. Finite entities can build a boat and not lift it. So at first, it seems like it's not open to this Aquinas solution. But here's what he says. He says this. So we go to 5. He says, but we're going to slow down. This puzzle actually is essentially open to the same answer as the first one about the square circle, and so it's going to fail also. It also, he says, you remember he went into why it's not so obvious in the beginning. Then he's going to say this. it actually is going to be bringing up a pseudo task. It's just not so obvious at first, because like I said, finite, we can build ships and not be able to lift it, okay? So he's gonna say here, a pseudo task is involved and has Aquinas already stated, no damage to the doctrine of omnipotence occurs when we say God can't do something that's an impossibility like a square circle. It has no relevance to his omnipotence. Okay, so here's what he's gonna do. He is gonna begin to explain how a self-contradictory pseudo-task is popping up in the paradox of the stone to reveal its specious nature, okay? He says it's there just like it was with the square circle. So Aquinas' solution is gonna work, but he says it's not so obvious at first, but it's there, and right now you have an idea of where the solution's gonna be with this. This paradox is involving a pseudo task, and that's how he's gonna respond to it. So he does this, everybody. He says, let's start this way. So I'm gonna show there's a pseudo task. I'm gonna take this approach. Let's start with this statement. God is either omnipotent or he isn't, right? So you see he's starting to get analytical. Let's just talk about God. You skeptics have been mentioning it generally. But here's his analytical work going. Let's assume in the beginning God is not omnipotent. He's finite like we are. And he says, so could he make something he can't lift? So he explains this in that paragraph 6 and says, yes, and there's no contradiction if God's not omnipotent and he can make something that he can't lift. Oh, that proves he's not omnipotent. Do you see what he says? Isn't that trivial? That's kind of what we started with. It's not even worth exploring that, and he describes it as, so we went along our roundabout journey and concluded God is not omnipotent, but he said that's what we assumed in the beginning. He's not omnipotent. Can he make a rock so heavy he can't lift? Yes. He's not omnipotent. Gotcha. And you're going, yeah, but that's what we started with, okay? He says for this to be significant, we need to now assume God is omnipotent, and does this really lead to damage to the doctrine of omnipotence, okay? So to be significant, we have to arrive at the same conclusion, but this time starting with the assumption that God is omnipotent, and then the reasoning must lead to a bona fide contradiction, like damage to omnipotence, okay? So now in 7 and 8, here's what he says in 7. So we have a new assumption now. Let's start that God is omnipotent. And here's where he engages in precise conceptual analysis that the skeptic bypassed. Didn't go down this deep, right? So with his analytical background, he points out that the phrase, a stone too heavy for God to lift, is actually self-contradictory, a pseudo task. Here's what he's saying. That little statement you have needs to be rewritten with more precision, okay? And it's on the board right there and over here, okay? He says, here's what you're really saying. A stone which cannot be lifted, because you remember you're assuming God's omnipotent. A stone which cannot be lifted so that's a too heavy stone, by him whose power is sufficient for lifting anything. Do any of you notice something about that phrase? This is Mavrodes and his analytical skill. What do you notice about that? I'll give you a clue. Welcome back to the party, St. Thomas. Okay? Where have you been? Good to have you. What's wrong with that statement?
Anything does not mean anything.
Okay, right, yes. So that's good, but there's even something else here. Donald, go ahead.
The terms cannot, a stone which cannot be lifted against power is sufficient for lifting anything. are clashing.
Yes, this is a pseudo task. It's an impossible situation. It doesn't make sense. What you're saying is a stone which can't be lifted by him whose power is sufficient for lifting anything. This is logically incoherent. It's an impossible task. It's a pseudo task. So he brings that out. The same problem occurs just like the phrase square circle. The paradox of the stone is playing off impossibility. Thus, this too heavy stone does no damage. So here's a pseudo task, just like the square circle is a pseudo object. He said they don't exist, it's impossible. It has no bearing on omnipotence. He's the first one here, not the first one ever, but with the skeptic, are you aware what you're asking is impossible, a pseudo task, makes no sense. So it has no bearing on the omnipotence of God, okay? So now we'll go to 8, okay? Here's where it's just a little technical and then it's kind of downhill from here, okay? And then we'll talk about some benefits, okay? So we're already at 8, how we doing? I know this is a little technical, but you are all STEM students, you thrive on stuff like this, right? You just love it. Okay, like you'd prefer this over romance novels any day of the week, wouldn't you? Like this is relaxing, right? Okay, it has a calming effect on you. Okay, now here comes the hardcore, die-hard skeptic objector. So here's what Mavrodes does. He goes, okay, I've just shown your whole paradox deals with a pseudo task. And like St. Thomas Aquinas, we're done. Okay, no, God can't make a square circle, it's impossible. No, God can't do that. So imagine Mavrodes saying, okay, we're done. How about you and I go for lunch? Boy, that didn't take me long to refute you skeptics at all. This was short shrift. So he says, what if you have a die-hard objector who says this? You know what? Hold on there, little buckaroo. Not so fast. No, this is too quick, and I don't think that's a pseudo task or self-contradictory or impossible at all. I think it's a possible task. Do you see? It's like it's so quick, it's almost embarrassing. Like, why don't we just go to lunch? I think we're done here. Gosh, this was so easy to refute, you guys. He says, what if you have a die-hard objector insisting that is possible, right? And not a logically incoherent task. So imagine people going, okay, Mavrodes, go get him. Time to dish up the smack and push back and say it is an impossible pseudo task. You know what Mavrodes does? This is where it's very clever. He goes, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that. What do you mean? Come on, you can't just. He goes, I'm not going to argue that it's a pseudo task. I'm going to show him as soon as he said that is possible, his whole argument implodes. Because in the beginning, you know what he said? If you have a too heavy stone, you say, yes, God can create a too heavy stone. He goes, that does damage to omnipotence, right? Now he is saying that is not a pseudo task. So what is he say? He's saying that's possible. What is he actually saying can exist side by side? Look at this. He's saying, no, this is too quick and we're not done yet. This is a possible scenario. What are the two entities that can exist side by side? Look at the phrase on the two boards. What is he actually admitting? Before a yes answer said you can't have an omnipotent God and a too heavy stone, right? Now he just said that's possible. What has he unknowingly admitted? What are two things that can coexist side by side?
The being can not only create the too heavy stone, but can also lift it.
Well, but is also what kind of God? Omnipotent. So let's look at the second handout because this is maybe the most technical part of it. So in my love and compassion and consideration, I actually have a second handout to explain what he was saying. You remember he said this, aren't you gonna push back on that? Of course it's a pseudo task. Here's what Mavrodes is doing. I know, but you know what? He's pretty much hung himself, so to speak. He's saying it's possible, so here's what he's saying. And Mavrodes is gonna say after this, you can't have it both ways, Mr. Objector, okay? And look at, do you see him? He's upset. Look at that, okay? Furrowed brow, that puppet, he's upset. Here's what he does in paragraph number 3. You remember, he said, you answered, yes, God can make a too heavy stone, and he says this. If you say yes, a too heavy stone has been created, but you remember he said this is bad news. Damage to the doctrine of omnipotence results, right? He said bad news, because then God can't lift it. So an affirmative answer here is bad. Now in paragraph 8, he gives another affirmative yes. But here the answer yes results all of a sudden in a different conclusion that he may not even be aware he is signed up for. Since the skeptic insists that Mavrodes has not described a pseudo task but it's possible, then yes, here's what he's saying. Yes, you can have a too heavy stone, the first part of that, to be created, and it exists alongside an omnipotent God. So now the too heavy stone is no longer a threat. Do you remember it was a threat? He has to admit that's not self-contradictory, it's possible. So imagine someone going, it's possible? What's possible? And imagine the skeptic going, you can have a too heavy stone right next to an omnipotent God. Oh, that didn't sound good. Could I backtrack on that? I don't know if I should have said that. Do you see? He's admitted you could have an omnipotent God and a too heavy stone. So why couldn't Mavrodes go, well, I guess we're done here now, but we could still go to lunch because you've just admitted God can be omnipotent and he's still omnipotent even if there was a too heavy stone. Do you see that? Because he refused to say it was a pseudo task. That's why Mavrodes said, no, I don't want to dish up the smack. I mean, it is a pseudo task. He's wrong. I think he will realize that he has just backed himself into a corner. Okay, you guys, now I know that was a little technical. Okay, all right, but very clever, isn't it? So you know what he says? Look what it says at the top. You can't have it both ways. Think the too heavy stone is a threat on paragraph 3, and then all of a sudden the too heavy stone is not a threat to omnipotence in paragraph 8. Do you guys see that? He says you can't have it both ways, and now, because you are saying a too heavy stone is not a threat, then the damage you thought in number 3 dissipates. You can't use that anymore. You sort of admitted it is possible, both could be there. Everything implodes. Now, isn't that clever? Or this is just good work. So when I read it, I could see why it was on a top 10 list, okay? Now, when I give you the article, you can take home and read it, you can kind of digest this a little more, okay? So anyway, hopefully that second handout helped. So you can have it both ways, and Mavrodes says this. So that isn't a pseudo task? No, gotcha. Okay, just a man going, gotcha. And then he says, let's just go to lunch. Okay, we're done. Okay, let's just go to lunch. Okay, and maybe he'll go, all right, I don't know. Okay, let's just go to lunch. So pretty clever. And then we're almost done with this part. Mavrodes actually wants to deal, you know what? I want to deal with, let's say you said no. He said, no, you can't make that rock. I actually think there's something we could say to that. And I don't think we have given up anything on omnipotence if someone says, no, God can't make that rock. So this is where the fourth character comes in, the theologian, right? So he says, let's say you have a theologian, and we're in paragraph 9, and He loves God, he knows God is powerful, so he says no, God could never make anything that he can't lift. You see that the love of God is there. Like, I'm just not comfortable saying he can make that, so I'll answer no, but he knows the skeptics with the no think they have a victory there, so he decides, okay, it's no, God can do, anything, or he can't make something he can't lift, so I'm gonna go no. Oh, well, that's something he can't do. Here's what Mavrodes does. He says the theologian's gonna go, maybe I've had to back off a little bit, right? But I'm gonna concede as little as possible. So I'm gonna say this, God is limited in regards to creating things. He could never create something he can't lift. But nothing in the paradox says he's limited any other way. There's no other restrictions in the paradox, right? So Mavrodes says, based on that, in 10, he said, the theologian may believe he's had to backtrack a little bit and concede just a smidgy, and he maybe doesn't feel good about that, but he just can't bring himself to say God could make something so heavy he can't lift. So he says no, right? Here's what Mavrodes says. He says, I don't think he's given up jack anything about God's power at all. He says, notice the paradox. There's no restriction given other than this issue of creating. So he said, it says nothing of limiting God's power to lift. So with that, okay, God is restricted from creating a stone too heavy for him to lift creating, but nothing in the argument requires the theologian to admit any limit on God's power about lifting. So here's how Mavrodes says nothing has been given up, even with a no answer. This means his unrestricted, unlimited lifting abilities will always outstrip any increasing tonnage. Do you guys see that? So what did I just say? So he makes a rock that's real heavy and it's got a specific weight. But God's lifting ability is unlimited. Could he lift that rock? What about if you make the rock a little bit more tonnage? What does it say about his lifting ability?
Rise to meet it.
It rises to the occasion. You see, so he says he cannot make a too heavy stone, not because of limitation, but because of a prior condition of infinite, constantly increasing lifting power. And I think that's pretty clever too. So he's a feisty little philosopher here. He wants to also deal with the no answer. Right? Okay. So he has one little paragraph. There's his progression. You remember you all came up with your solutions in your group and it was a start. Isn't this like a beautiful piece of work? It's just very impressive. Okay? And it's a good exemplar. He has a question that I want to ask you guys now. Now, I think we're within our epistemic rights to see the paradox of the stone as not a threat to omnipotence. It just means, has there been good work that is plausible to respond to this attack? And there is. The skeptics are never ever going to agree. And even if something was a slam dunk, here's what skeptics of faith do. They just go on to the remaining problems and will camp there, right? So I want to ask you this. What has this paradox shown that God is this response, has it shown that God is in fact omnipotent? Has his rebuttal of this paradox of the stone, this puzzle, demonstrated God is in fact omnipotent? Yes or no? Okay, I like you shaking your head. You're right. Why'd you say that?
It only has proven that this particular argument against his omnipotence is invalid.
Okay, that is so good. Did you guys hear that? Okay, good job. I'm going to give you 50 extra credit points for that. Okay, good job. It doesn't. All it shows is this attempt to use the paradox to show omnipotence doesn't make sense, it fails. And here you see the beauty and the value of analytical philosophy work. That's got meat to it, that it matters. What would you need to do to show there's a God who's omnipotent? What, if it's not responding to this attack on the concept, what establishes that?
You'd have to detail every single task that God could do. You have to like detail an infinite amount of tasks that an infinite God could do.
Well, I'm even thinking of what are some other things in philosophy that are there that deal with, does in fact an omnipotent God exist? It would have to be other arguments, positive arguments that there is a God, cosmological, teleological, ontological, which Daryl talked about last week, the moral argument, Aquinas's argument on necessity and existence for an ontological infinite regress, Kalam arguments, these would be used to establish there is a God and in fact is all powerful, right? So we have those, but this here, Mavrodes just wants you all to know, all he's done, he said, I haven't proven God in fact is omnipotent. I've shown that this attempt by the skeptics fails and omnipotence is still on the table, and it's been on the table from other arguments. Do you guys see that? Okay, all right. So there we go, and that was very, very good. Okay, and now let's just talk about this. We'll talk about some benefits of going through this. Can you guys, let me ask you this. We just plowed through this, but you guys, because you're STEM, you have more energy now after going through this than you did when we started. This has a calming effect on all of you. This is in your lane. Why is plowing through this, what are the benefits of plowing through something like this? And reading it, getting your pencil, and I'm actually going to pass this out. Here's the actual article, right? You just take this home now. I think you guys are equipped. Get pencil, cup of coffee. And make sure they go all the way around that table and pass those. And just enjoy going through that, because I know you guys don't have much schoolwork to do. You just have so much time just to read stuff that you want to read. I get that. What are the benefits of plowing through this, everybody? Go ahead, Bob.
Hearing it for yourself and working through it, because then when you do hear it by somebody out on the campus, it's not gonna be a shocker.
Okay, you're prepared.
Even if you never talk to another living soul about this, learning to think clearly is a good thing in its own right.
Yes, and is there something we've learned about neurology? What's the new term, starts with an N? If you practice logical thinking, and what happens with your brain? Neuroplasticity. You can make efficient by restructuring existing pathways, or you can create new neural connections by going through this. Now, this is going to sound a little strange. Sometimes when I'm on vacation, I will mow through like 4 or 5 journal articles in philosophy. It's awesome. And then I start getting tired and burned out, and then the friggy's there. You got to go get a snack, and there's all these things interrupt you from doing that. But I notice when I go through 4 or 5, this may sound, you'll just have to decide if you believe me. I think my brain's just a tad little itty bitty sharper. I kind of just sense neural. Am I wackadoodle on this, or do you? So going through this is good in developing your neural connections, critical thinking skills. You're familiar with stuff, and even if you could never duplicate this talk, right? You at least have heard it and say, you know, I can't remember, but I do know we have capable philosophers out there that have successfully responded to this, that has been effective enough. We're in our epistemic rights to see it not as a threat. So you're not shaken. And it's very important in the defense of the faith. Do you realize Mavrodes just defended Christianity against flaming arrows? Okay? Now, these critical thinking skills, I want to highlight two, and we'll be wrapping up, okay? In my philosophy classes, there are two skills of critical thinking skills that I stress that students will benefit from if they take philosophy and read it. And the two are recognizing the implications of ideas, theories, and facts. And the other one is actually being able to recognize distinctions between two theories and verbally able to articulate them. So at first you might go, but do you realize good critical thinkers know the implications from ideas and they recognize distinctions and can articulate it? So I want to write something up here. I do this in class, so we'll go in the back here. You know what a flow chart is? You got here, and then you have this, and then you got a circle, and it might do that to another conceptual box, and then you have that, right? So you have theory or facts or ideas are in the conceptual circles or squares, okay? The arrows, I tell my students, are just as important as what's in the boxes. And good critical thinkers can know that if you have an idea, they understand why the arrow goes here because ideas have consequences or they have other conceptual implications. And so good critical thinkers, they start seeing these connections more and more. They realize the arrows are just as important as the facts. If you have a fact or a theory not in context, your understanding of it is limited. If you're having a fact being shared in a textbook, let's say they highlight a fact or a theory and it's got its own little box, you know, the textbooks and all that. Good critical thinkers say this, oh, I know why they're highlighting this theory or fact. I see its significance. I see how it's related. So good critical thinkers pay just as much attention to the arrows from one box to another circle and are able to articulate what relationship is actually going on. Like to even get specific about what the arrow is conveying. And here's some examples. I was at a conference once for it was at CU Boulder, and so there were theists there were atheists, there were people of a lot of different, and I would sit in some of the papers, and this one guy was a grad student, he was an atheist, it was pretty obvious. Kind of militant a little bit, but not bad enough that he wasn't getting kicked out of the program, okay? So anyway, we were in the plenary session where they had a professor from UC Berkeley. She was the plenary speaker, and her whole talks were on what faith is, and I was looking at her notes, and she mentioned evidence a lot and how important it was for faith. Okay, and I don't know where she was, but she was the head of the Berkeley philosophy program, and I looked at her notes, and I liked the epistemology. I said, oh, she mentions evidence in several places here. It's not a blind faith, right? It's not wishful thinking. You know what I did? I predicted, because that grad student was an atheist. I said, atheists don't like good PR for theism, right? The caricatures that it's a blind faith serves them better than respectable, sensible stuff. Like straw man sometimes can work, right? So I said, I bet you he's not, you see I make connections. Here's this, the arrows. I said, I bet you as soon as his hand goes up, he's gonna question whether evidence is really necessary or should be believed, and is it philosophically sound? He's gonna have trouble that she was stressing evidence and she was credentialed and said it isn't a blind faith. Do you see that? Sure enough, guess what happened during the question and answer time? Just take a guess. And he just didn't like that she was bringing up evidence because it was good PR for a definition of faith, and it removed a straw man. It's an urban legend to say faith is blind, and here's a Berkeley professor, and I didn't know where she was, but she just said with her thought that she weaved in intelligence and, evidence and its importance. But you see how I was able to predict? Just because you know these, so the arrows are just as important. And I tell my students, good critical thinkers, they pay attention to the arrows. People who need to work on critical thinking are not at that stage. And in my life, that's probably one of the best skills I've learned, is making these connections. Here's another one. I was watching an online course of a Yale professor teaching a class on ethics. And after listening to this course for a while, I said, about 3 weeks. I go, he's a Rawlsian. So he's talking about capitalism versus democratic socialism. And Rawls was more of an egalitarian, and he's not quite a capitalist in open markets and individual chasing after your dreams and meritocracy, because it produces inequalities. Rawlsian is you only justify a difference in income if the smallest piece of pie, the lowest class, the poorest, has the biggest piece of pie they can, okay? So I knew he was opposed to, laissez-faire capitalism. So you know what I said? I bet you in about 2 or 3 weeks, he's gonna have the class discuss whether individual meritocracy is a legitimate concept, because he's a Rawlsian. Because you know why a lot of people want open markets and like capitalism? A lot of people on earth believe if you work harder, you deserve the fruit of that labor, right? That resonates, that you did it. So if you are a collectivist, you want to try to tear down the one thing that resonates the most with the other side, individual meritocracy. Okay, guess what he started talking about in about 2 weeks? Just take a guess. He had a discussion on, is individual meritocracy really legitimate? Was it just you, or really, do you really have to, were there a lot of other people that can take credit for your efforts, right? That's because I've learned to keep paying attention to the connections between things, where you almost can predict. You guys probably do it at this level, or maybe you guys with STEM, you guys rival philosophers with critical thinking skills. I actually think you guys score a little higher, okay? So I'm awed and humbled in your presence, okay? What if you hear this? If someone says, what's true for you is true for you, what's true for me is true for me, that's ethical subjectivism, right? What most likely is their worldview? Theism or secular naturalism?
Naturalism.
You see, you already are making, if you're secular, you're gonna most in high probability be a subjectivist, right? And if someone says, I really think there's a real objective right or wrong for real, and we all intuit that, in high probability, what is the worldview that came from, the arrow coming down? I'm an objectivist. Most likely, what is the worldview of that person?
Theist.
Okay, do you see you're already making those, but the more you can do that. So here's my point. When you do these things, plow through a difficult piece here, it helps you see connections and develop this skill. Okay? And then there's just one more and we're done. Am I talking too much?
No.
We okay? All right. Okay, distinctions. If you have 2 theories and they are the same in every way, how many theories do you have?
One.
Did you like that visual aid?
Oh, good.
I made that up. Okay, you have 1, right? So if you have 2 different theories in a textbook, good thinkers recognize why they are distinct in a significant way. If they were not distinct, you wouldn't have 2 or 3 theories, you'd have 1. So the ability to recognize distinctions shows you know why there's two and not one, and it actually reveals you really do understand each of those two theories, right? So I have an example here, and I want to see if you guys can figure this out. This is from a logic textbook, so I need your input on this. Environmentalists, it's actually in your notes at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Environmentalists are continually harping about the dangers of nuclear power. Unfortunately, electricity is dangerous no matter where it comes from. Every year, hundreds of people are electrocuted by accidents, since most of these accidents are caused by carelessness. Okay, there's a little typo there. Okay, because of that typo that's morally wrong and inexcusable, this will be the last time I will feel I should come and present here.
Yeah.
Okay, just huge mistake. Let's see, every year hundreds of people are electrocuted by accidents, since most of these accidents are caused by carelessness. They could be avoided if people would just exercise greater caution. Now, do you see the fallacy there? It's red herring. What does red herring mean? What's that fallacy?
Arbitrary.
Not arbitrary. When you commit red herring, what have you done?
Something not related to the.
Yeah.
Often red herring is related. That's why it sneaks up on us and we don't notice it.
It's a distraction.
A distraction, you've changed the subject, and often it's related, you don't see it. And you know where that phrase red herring came from? When they trained bloodhounds to be trackers. Here, sniff this shirt of someone, and then they go and train the bloodhound to go after that scent in the woods. They would drag a herring on a different path with that odor to train the dogs, do not go after the new scent that is tantalizing to a bloodhound,
Squirrel.
right?
Squirrel.
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 Okay, so that's what red herring meant, is they're trying to teach them to not go off the path. So here, red herring fallacy has been committed, but you're not going to be able to know how to answer this unless you see the distinction that there are two different things going on. So can someone tell me what the change of subject is? It's distinct. If it wasn't distinct, it wouldn't be a red herring. And can you articulate it? Like, let's say someone's talking to you. What would you say to them to say, whoa, slow down here. We're talking about this, but you're talking about that. Now, if you want to talk about that later, we can, but that's not my point. Does anybody want to try this? Distinctions. Good critical thinkers do it.
Yeah, so it starts with nuclear power.
Okay. What about nuclear power?
So environmentalists are continually harping about the dangers of nuclear power.
Okay,
Basically,
The
they're
dangers
saying,
of nuclear power.
so basically, he's trying to respond to the argument that nuclear power is dangerous.
Okay, well, you're right. And why is it dangerous? What do we have in nuclear power plants?
Radiation.
We got controlled nuclear bombs, right? Or something. Okay, so and then what are some of the bad effects of nuclear energy? The big R? Radiation, desalinization with the warm water, whatever. Okay, dangers of this. But this is odd. Why is electricity being brought up here? It's related, but why is electricity being, they're talking about,
Because that can be easily mitigated, right?
Electricity.
Electricity is dangerous, but we can deal with,
okay, I'm looking, Carl, something more fundamental. What's the purpose?
It can be-
Okay, go ahead. Dick, Donald, go ahead.
It can be produced by waterfalls, by hydroelectric, et cetera, not just nuclear.
Okay, you just said it. What is the purpose of a nuclear power plant? What's the final product?
It actually, the nuclear power plant actually creates the electricity,
Okay.
and then they just.
You
The
haven't,
writer
is that
is
what you were
just-
gonna say?
No, so what I was gonna say is that, so it starts with nuclear power, but then it goes into electricity is dangerous no matter where it comes from. Basically, it's deflecting, and there's no numbers associated with it. So I think the premise underlying this is that we wanna produce the most amount of energy with the least amount of deaths. And it's trying to argue that because electricity is dangerous in other forms, that nuclear power is fine. But the problem with this is like, there's no numbers attached to it.
Okay, Now, that could be good a little bit later on to nuance and fill out, but there's something more fundamental. Why is, there's a distinction here. What is the purpose of a nuclear power plant? So here's a nuclear power plant, and there's a big conduit. What product is being dispensed from a nuclear power plant that's going to downtown Denver?
Electricity.
Electricity. So there is, right? That what you were gonna say?
Yeah, but it can be produced from different sources.
Well, it can, but with nuclear power plants, if you really think, what's the point of that? To produce radiation? It's to make something turn, and then electricity's right there. It's actually to produce the product of electricity. That's why she's bringing up, whoever this was, he or she, electricity. So you see it's related. So how would you get her back on track or him on track? I want a specific nuanced sentence. Distinctions, you see, because in a lot of debates, it's saying this is what we're talking about and that's something different. That's a skill. So how would you show her that's not what we're talking about? Go ahead.
Well, kind of what Donald was kind of saying of just like, well, electricity comes from many places, but what does that have to do with nuclear power specifically?
Okay, you're getting close. Go ahead, Devin.
I'd just say that we're trying to talk about the process of nuclear power, not necessarily what is coming out as a product.
Yes, what's coming out's got its own dangers. We're talking about the process producing the product. You're talking about the dangers of the product. That was good. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I also realize like it's a complete, like this argument is even worse now that I think about it more. So basically, it's talking about the dangers of nuclear power, but then it deflects by talking about the end use of electricity.
Yes, the product.
It's talking about the dangers of the distribution, but where the power comes from has no effect on the dangers of the distribution.
Yeah, this guy's just focusing radiation, you know, once you get something turning, you've got electricity. Here's a way to make some waterfalls, what Donald was saying, other things. Okay, you guys, but do you see, I tell my students distinctions. So here's a quick one. Tell me real quick, what's the difference between the Big Mac and the Quarter Pounder? Real quick. Are they the same sandwich or are they different?
Different.
I practice this driving home, distinctions between things. I do that. What's the difference between Quarter Pounder and the Big Mac?
So it's sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Okay, how many buns? For the
Three,
Quarter
actually.
Pounder? 3. How many for the Quarter Pounder?
2.
How many for the Big Mac?
3.
Does the Quarter Pounder have secret sauce?
No.
No, but the Big Mac does. I drive home and I practice making I'm telling you, it's an important neural connection. Good critical thinkers said what you said, Devin, okay? I'm gonna give you 50 extra credit points for that also, okay? All right, you guys, you have some burning questions, because we're a little over. What should we do here?
I can close this out and then
Okay.
we can continue for whoever.
And go home and read that when you have a chance. I think you go, I wanna read that, okay? Some of you may go, well, speak for yourself, Dave. But
Let's just give a round of applause. Coming out, sure. Really appreciate having your insight on this. I have a few announcements. I'll pray us out, and then you are free to ask questions, leave, eat more snacks, whatever your desire is. As Mason mentioned, Anchor, this Friday, it is going to be in Petroleum Hall and Green Center, the big auditorium building over there. We're gonna be having our very own Donald speaking. It's just a great time of fellowship, meeting with all the other ministries on campus. I would strongly encourage you to at least check it out. There's food there, they provide dinner, so please check it out, at least for that. We have a group me. Please bother anybody who is in the group me. They will be able to add you. Mason, I, Donald, Carl, we are all very familiar with this process, so if you need to be added and somebody's unsure, just come to us and we'll add you. Our YouTube channel, we post these. If you want to go back and just really think about what something that David Spiegel said, or possibly a question somebody answered, and you really want to sit and delve on that, you can go back. We try and get them posted within a day after, so you can go back and watch them again. So yeah, please consider that. Yes.
Carl is next week on.
So we're gonna be taking a look, we're gonna delve into some engineering. We're gonna take a look at the folding of beetle wings. So how do they do that? What do we think about that?
Bring your friends.
Bring your friends. But more particularly, how this might address this idea of intelligent design.
Yes.
Why would we think that such a thing, so we have to understand what the thing is first of all. But then why would such a thing, would we be right to say this is a product of intelligent agency or intelligent design versus just random processes? And why are we entitled to make those claims? So
yeah, that's next week, so it's very interesting to hear about that. We've done similar talks before about like spiders and spider silk, but just I would strongly encourage coming because it is a very interesting subject to delve into. And final thing, we have started to assemble a library of small little booklets. These are booklets from Ratio Christi. They talk on any small little topic, such as like biblical archaeology. So if you're interested in like, oh, well, where did all of these manuscripts come from? Where are we getting this like specific information from? We have tons of booklets on all sorts of different things. Mason is gonna be taking care of that and kind of like checking in and checking out. These are our Ratio Christi copies, so we would appreciate if they get returned. So if you just go through Mason, he would be happy to lend you one for a week or two if you wanna really delve into it and just learn about it. But yeah, without further ado, I'll pray us out and you are all free to leave and eat snacks and ask questions. Lord, I just thank you for this wonderful night that you've given us, that we've been able to learn something really interesting and really pick at our brains a little bit and make those connections. I just pray that you would teach us through this, that we could become better critical thinkers and better at picking apart arguments and statements and really making sure that we define what we're saying and that we know what we are saying. I just pray that you'd continue to develop these skills in us as we go out, and that they would not just sit dead in our minds, but that we would truly want to use them and develop them further. And I just pray that everybody here would be able to get home safely, have plenty of snacks, and wake up tomorrow ready for career fair and hopefully get a job. But in your holy and precious name I pray, amen. Snacks.
Caramel shortbreads are actually.
Here is our library.
Caramel shortbreads.
So if you're interested in looking at some.
They're pretty good.
Not this semester, next semester, there's places.
And also the homemade Rice Krispie things. Yeah. Well, they're not like Rice Krispie. They're made like with whole grains and like chocolate.
My husband said that,
Oh, you don't like
I forget it was McDonald's or Burger King.
AW.
Oh, okay.
They were advertising